Good morning. Today we are finishing up with Unit 3. This is our last objective of the unit, PO28. So being a PO means it's a power objective. It's one of those ones that we have to master. Okay, math builds on itself, and this is a very important one that we know is going to be built on as we go through the year. Next week is Thanksgiving week. So we are not doing we're not doing a test right before Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, next week we'll have review, we will have retakes. So I am gonna have a retake day next week. So if we don't get retakes all done tomorrow, I will finish up next week. After Thanksgiving, Monday will be a review day. Tuesday will be the practice test. Wednesday will be the test. So you need to come back from Thanksgiving ready to test, okay? So we're going to come back knowing that we're not learning new material. We're going to review and test on what we've just gone over. Ava.
Why wouldn't we just do a test and then wait?
So I like to have a review day, and then I like to have the practice test and then the real test, and I can't squish it all in before Thanksgiving. So I don't want to do the review and the practice test before Thanksgiving and then have the test the Monday we come back from break. That's kind of mean, I feel like. I don't always remember everything from before a break, so I need that review time, and I figure a lot of you might. So that's why we're doing the review and the test both after Thanksgiving. Does that sound fair, or
Yeah.
do you want me to give you a test on the Monday after Thanksgiving? Okay, I didn't think so. All right, so PO28. I can write proportions and solve proportions. So a proportion is the fractions, rates, or ratios that are equivalent. So we have been working on those equivalent things, multiplying or dividing by the same number. Okay. So now we're going to work with those as a proportion. It's a new word that we've been using equivalent. It's the same thing. Okay. Proportions are equivalent fractions. So knowing this, you can write proportions and solve proportions with a value missing. So this is information that we have already learned. We're just doing something new with it. So this isn't new information. It's just a new way to work with what we've already learned. So don't forget to put your units in the same place in the proportion. So when we were working with our rates yesterday, I said, make sure you label them, because if apples are on top, we want apples on top. If the gallons was on the bottom, we want the gallons on the bottom. So we're gonna make sure that our measurements are the same, both in the top, both in the bottom. So we're gonna write a proportion for each statement. So think about what we did yesterday with our rates. 2 cups for 3 batches. What would that look like? 2 cups for 3 batches. Think about what we did yesterday. What do you think, Ava?
2 over 3?
Yeah. And we want to put our labels. 2 cups for 3 batches. Right? So that's that first part. 2 cups for 3 batches. And then we have 18 cups for 27 batches. They are equivalent. How do I know that they are equivalent, Melanie?
Because if you divide something into 18 and you can multiply it.
If I multiply both the top and the bottom by 9, I get 18/27. Okay, that's how I know that it is a proportion. They are equivalent. because I'm multiplying the top and the bottom by the same number. Does that make sense, Melanie? I think you knew we just didn't quite get to this. So 2 times 9 is 18, 3 times 9 is 27. It is proportionate. They are equivalent, saying the same thing. Notice how we have cups on top, batches on bottom, batches on bottom. So let's look at our next one. How would I set up my proportions? Zelda.
You would do $6 over 12 apples, and you would do $18 over 36 apples.
I have dollars on top, apples on bottom, dollars on top, apples on bottom. How do I know that it is a proportion? Hannah Mae.
Because 6 times 3 is 18.
6 times 3 is 18.
And then 12 times 3 is 36.
12 times 3 is 36. Whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. That's what it means to be equivalent. Doing the same thing to the top and the bottom. Well, let's look at our next one. 24 bottles per pack, 72 bottles in 3 packs. What would that proportion look like? Madison.
24 bottles over 70.
24 bottles per pack, 72 bottles in 3 packs.
So would it be 24 bottles over 2 packs?
So let's look at this. If it says per pack, how many packs is that? If it's per pack, it's going to be 1 pack. So it doesn't say 24 bottles per 1 pack, because that we don't have to say the 1 in English. We just know that when it says per pack, it means 1, which is why we have this as an example, because, yep, it's kind of hard to read that when we're used to looking for those numbers. What does that equal, Madison?
Over 72 bottles over under 3 packs.
Over per 3 packs. How do we know this is a proportion?
Multiply by 2.
If I multiply 24 by 3, I get 72. 1 times 3 gets me the 3. Let's look at our next one. 5 goals in 8 games, 50 goals in 80 games. What does that proportion look like? Connor.
5 over 8.
Oh, careful. 5 what?
5 goals.
We have to put our labels in. 5 goals over 8 games equals
50 goals in 80 games.
50 goals in 80 games. How do we know that this is a proportion? Ava?
Multiply it by 10.
We're multiplying both the top and the bottom by 10. Next one, 145 words per page and 2,900 words on 20 pages. How would that proportion look like? Lauren?
150 for 45 words per on 1 page.
145 words over 1 page. And that equals what, Lauren?
2,900 words over 20 pages.
And how do we know this is a proportion? Ava?
You multiply it by 20.
Yeah, multiplying the top by 20, 145 times 20, we get 2,900. 1 times 20, we get 20. And our last one, 12 laps in 3 hours, 8 laps in 2 hours. What's that proportion look like? Callie?
Oh, I'm just scratching it.
Give it a shot. Try to see if you can do the proportion.
12 laps over 3 hours
How do we know this one's a proportion? How do you think we know this is a proportion? There is not something I can multiply 12 by to get 8. How can I prove that this is a proportion? Anna Mae?
Well, I don't know if this is right, but 2 can go into 8 and then 3 can go into 12.
True. That's not how I would prove it though, because it's not always going to be the case. What's your guess, Ava?
You multiply 3 times 2.
3 times 2 is 6. Nowhere in there do I see a 6. 12 times 8 is 96. That's not gonna. Layla, what do you think? What do I divide? So, if we divided 2 by 3, what would we get? What is 2 divided by 3?
Yeah, because she's a first number.
What is 2 divided by 3? Get your calculators out. Lauren? So Zelda said we can't divide 2 by 3. 2 is a prime. We can't take 3 out. But we're in big kid math now. We do decimals. So it's not going to be an even whole number that we get out of it. But 2 divided by 3 was 1.5. What's 8 divided by 12? Well, 8 divided by 12? Dom? Do it again, Dom. 8. You doing a calculator? Calculator friend. Zelda, what's 8 divided by 12?
It's 1.5 now.
Look at that. So if we did 8 divided by 12, we got 1.5. So that means 12 times 1.5, that is 8. And 3 times 1.5 gets us 2. Because when we multiply by decimals, we get those smaller numbers, right? So when we don't have those easy ones, where we say, oh, I can easily see what I'm multiplying by to go up, or I'm dividing by to go down, sometimes they're not going to be so easy. So we might have to do some math because the mental math doesn't always work for us. Because if we do 12 times 1.5, 12 times 1.5 is 18. Hold on, where did we go wrong? 8 divided by 12. 8 divided by 12, who said that was 1.5? I was trusting you guys. 2 divided by 3 is not 1.5 either. I was trusting you guys.
That's what I thought too.
Okay, so you guys got to point out, I didn't have my calculator out. I was trusting you guys with that. So it is not 1.5. That's why it wasn't quite making sense. I thought it had to be no whole number in there. 2 divided by 3 is 0.67 if we round it. But 0.66667. Goodness. Next time I'm pulling my calculator out right away. I think what somebody did was they divided 3 divided by 2 instead of 2 divided by 3. But we have to take this first number. We're going to listen to our lesson. We have to take this second number and we divide it by this number to see what math was done. So up here, we would do 8 divided by 12, and we get that same 0.66667. So we know if we multiply by that, 12 multiplied by 0.667, we should get 8. And we do. Okay? So now that we're doing it the correct way, you have to take the second number, divide it by the first instead, because usually we can take that first number, multiply it, and get our second number. But here we had to take that second number, divide it by that first number to see what it was that we were multiplying by. Does that make sense? We're going to do some more to make sure that we understand how to find missing numbers now. So now we understand how the proportions work. Let me scroll up. So now we need to write a proportion that describes each situation, then solve it for the missing value using rates or cross products. Show your work. So the first one says you are allowed to watch 3 hours of TV in a weekend. How many hours of TV can you watch in 4 weekends? How would I set this proportion up? Melanie?
Hours over 4 weekends.
I am allowed to watch 3 hours of TV in a weekend.
So 1 weekend.
Yeah, 3 hours for 1 weekend. What does that equal? We have an unknown, so we're going to put a question mark somewhere. Who thinks they can say what that second part of my proportion is? Jimena. We're not timesing by 4. So we're writing out our proportion first. You're jumping ahead, Jimena. What am I going to put for my second part of a proportion? Where's my question mark? Is it with the hours or the weekend?
Hours.
So I'm going to put a question mark right there. And 4 weekends. So this is why it's super important that we have our labels. If hours are on top here, hours are on top here. Weekends on the bottom, weekends on the bottom. Now, Jimena was thinking ahead, saying, how did I go from 1 to 4? So what math are we going to do to solve for our question mark, Jimena? Multiplying by 4. I know 1 times 4 gets me the 4 weekends. So I need to do the same thing I did to the bottom, I need to do to the top. 3 times 4 gets me how many hours, Jimena? 12 hours. So that is my answer. How many hours of TV can you watch in 4 weekends? I can watch 12 hours. So it is.
Well, in 1 week.
Yeah. So key thing here, friends, it says show your work. So do I want to see just 12 hours as your answer? No, I want to see your proportion. I want to see what you're multiplying by. And do not forget to label your proportion. So you know hours are on top, weekends are on bottom. Ava.
Wait, so when you explain how to go, do you have to write I know because I did this, or can you just do what you did up there?
So what the directions say is write a proportion that describes each situation. Then solve it for the missing value using rates or cross products and show your work. Doesn't it say explain how you know?
Is that so what we did yesterday?
The question yesterday said explain how you know. So you had to explain it. This one doesn't say explain it, but you have to show how you're getting the 12 hours. Okay. Your famous recipe for barbecue sauce uses 2 cups of brown sugar per batch. How many cups will you need to make 7 batches? How am I going to set this proportion up? What would be the first part of my proportion? Lilia.
You would do 2 cups and 1 batch.
2 cups over 1 batch. And that's going to equal what? 2 cups over 1 batch equals what? Madison?
Equals, 12, about 7 batch. Yeah, I don't know.
Lilia?
7 batches at the bottom. Oh. And the question mark at the top.
So when we look at our question, it says, how many cups? So I know my question mark goes with the cups. Cups are on top, cups are on top. I know there are 7 batches. So I'm going from 1 batch to 7 batches. How many cups? How am I going to solve this, Bryn? Why am I multiplying it by 7?
Because you have 7 batches.
To go from 1 batch to 7 batches, I multiply by 7. So I need whatever I did to the bottom, I need to do to the top. So how many cups of brown sugar do I need? 2 times 7 is 14 cups.
Okay, that's not right.
All right, in 4 games this season, you have scored 10 goals. Holy Hannah, you're a scoring machine. You've scored 10 goals in 4 games. At this rate, how many goals will you score in 14 games? What's the first part of my proportion? Ava.
So put 4 games over 10 goals.
So think about how it works when we go down to that unit rate. Would I go down to 1 goal in how many games, or would I go down to how many goals in 1 game? You can set it up this way, or you could flip it and say 10 goals per 4 games. But this way works too. So 4 games to 10 goals.
And then you get to the equal sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put 14 on the top, and then a question mark on the bottom.
What is missing from that proportion?
14 games. And a question mark.
14 games, and we want to know how many goals. What math am I going to do to solve this? This was like our tricky one from on the top. What math do I have to, because I don't know 4 times what equals 14. Oh goodness, I don't know that math. 4 times what equals 14, I don't know. It's not an even number, right? It's not that whole number. 4 doesn't go evenly into 14. So what do I have to do to find it? Melanie? Divide what?
4, or 14 by 4.
I need to say, okay, what was 14 divided by 4? Because if I don't know what 4 times what equals 14, I'm going to do the opposite. 14 divided by 4 is going to get me what I'm going to multiply by. What is 14 divided by 4? Zelda?
3.5.
3.5. So 14 divided by 3.5 gets me 4. I know I need to multiply by 3.5. What is 10 times 3.5? What was it, Melanie? 10 times 3.5 is, oops, let me move it over, 35 goals. Do you see how we found that? When you have one that is not a factor of that number, you don't know 4 times what, then you have to divide it. Okay? Let's look at our second page. doesn't want to scroll up for me. So we have all of these proportions we need to figure out, and then we have a review at the bottom. You're going to do the same thing. It's the same directions, we're just continuing it. Write the first proportion that we know. Make sure you use your labels. It equals, what's our second proportion? Put the question mark where the question goes, so you know what you're comparing. You have to make sure that you've got games to games, goals to goals. So here you would have 8 hours of sleep each night. So you'd have hours to hours, night to, how many hours will you sleep over the next week? What do I have to do there, Jimena?
So instead of like the next until the be 7 nights.
Yes. Each night, a week is 7 nights. So we always want to make sure our measurements match. So instead of saying 8 hours of sleep in one night to question mark over 1 week, well, nights and weeks don't match. So we need to convert that week to how many nights. So you have to make sure they match. Okay, so just stop and think about your proportions as you're setting them up. Measurements have to match. Okay, you might have to divide backwards to see what you're multiplying by. So I'm giving us plenty of time to work on this, to come up to me with questions if you have questions. Remember, Khan Academy is due tonight. So if you get done with your daily work, work on that Khan Academy. If you're done with Khan Academy, work on your math packet. We did the video yesterday, so the video is on my YouTube channel. Rewatch that video to help you with the packet. If you are watching this at home, we hope you are well, and we hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.